I'm going to choose to sit here because I'm dealing with an injury of my own through sports, but it shows how dedicated I am to the topic.
It's on the injured reserve.
Yes. But I think what was interesting, Dr. Gregory's testimony earlier about the lack of African American men in executive positions actually ties very quickly into my point here. Earlier this week, I was talking to a friend of mine trying to get him to come to this presentation. And I said, would you like to come? He asked about the topic. We talked. He said, there's no racism in sports anymore, that black people are playing everywhere. And I laughed at first, and I thought about it for a second. And you can do the research. There are more minority players today in all sports across the board than any time else. In basketball and football and baseball, you see them. They're prominent. But it only goes as far as that. And I'll explain what I mean right here. The top paid baseball player last year was Alex Rodriguez, and he made $30 million a year. Highest paid. The Houston Astros, which were the worst baseball franchise last year, made a net revenue for their owner of $196 million. In the NBA, Kobe Bryant is the highest paid player, and his salary totaled about $27.8 million. The Brooklyn Nets, who had the worst revenue total last year, still totaled $84 million. It's quite interesting when you see the disparity between the players and the owners. And quite obviously the owners owning an entire team brings them in more money. But the issue at hand here, not so much as that, but who these owners are as executives. And this is what ties into it. In baseball, there is one owner who is not fully Caucasian. Artie Moreno, who is actually half white and half Mexican. He owns the Los Angeles Angels. Magic Johnson is part of a group that now owns the Los Angeles Dodgers, but he's a part of the group with 4 other white men. So Artie Moreno is the only majority non-Caucasian owner of an MLB franchise. You take a look over at the NBA, Michael Jordan owns the Charlotte Bobcats, and Mickey Arison, an Israeli man, owns the Miami Heat. And of course, all the other team owners are older Caucasian males. No surprise there, unfortunately. Now, Usher and Jay-Z and these guys have minority interests in some teams. Jay-Z had sold some of his minority interests in the Brooklyn Nets. But it's almost besides the point. Because when you look at who's really making the money here, you look and you see the money going into the pockets of older white Caucasian men. And in this book, $40 Million Slaves, there's a comparison made, a very controversial one, that talks and says that they are just now in a new form of a plantation, that these players are under contract and basically forced to work for white overlords. And if you look around, the managers and coaches for many of baseball, basketball, and football franchises are also predominantly white. So I can understand why the comparison brings controversy, but at the same time, he may have a point in a metaphorical sense that there is an issue going on here in mentality because, as we said, the minority players are now higher than ever. But if the ownership level is still so dominantly Caucasian and no minorities at all, no blacks, no Latinos, that is definitely an issue. The goals of these players, in a way, have to be adjusted. When Jackie Robinson, my personal hero, went out to play baseball and took all that he did, took pitches to the head, took slurs and curses and hate, they told him he wasn't even human, of course, because that thought process had never left. He went out there to fight for access. He didn't fight to become the best player in history, but he fought for access, equal access for people of his skin tone to play that game. That's what he fought for. The new wave after him, they fought with a chip on their shoulder because they felt they had the same right to play along the sides of whites as anybody else. So they all played Hank Aaron and guys like that, legends, with a chip on their shoulder, and they made a name for themselves. The newest wave that we know now, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, these players, Carmelo Anthony, who populate the NBA and other sports right now, they are privileged, and I use privileged in a very light sense, to be able to set new aspirations, where they can go out and try to be the best player in the game, and it's not held against them. But do their goals actually need to be changed? Do they really need to look for different things? And I say yes, because now you have access, now you have equal integration, and now you can be the best in the game. But the game isn't the whole picture. It's a business, and it always has been. And I hate to say it because I love sports. I grew up playing sports for years, and everybody, understands the enjoyment in that. But it's a business, and they make money off of it. So should they be changing that from the inside, or should they try to become owners themselves? It's not the easiest job in the world, as Michael Jordan, I'm sure, can attest to you, as he's now owning the Charlotte Bobcats, and they are a terrible sports franchise. They are a terrible sports franchise right now. And whether it be due to his leadership or other internal issues, it's not so easy to do such. So it's not so easy as me saying that these players need to get up and be owners and they're going to do it. I'm well aware that there's an issue at hand there. But looking around, there's a different culture that they have to deal with just being, African American, being Latino, being any kind of color that's not Caucasian. These cultures aren't respected when we play out there. And I'll give you a great example. I covered the Mets for a while, and a good few years ago, Omar Minaya was implemented as their general manager. Basically, the first Hispanic general manager across baseball was hit with a lot of slack. Every time he signed a Latino player, it was because he showed favoritism. And the issue with that, along many other things, is that the media didn't realize how much power they had. But going into that after, signing these Latino players, bringing them through these prospects, they're thrown into the American environment of sports. Today's topic is white supremacy in American sport, because American sport is different than anywhere else. And the culture here, especially in New York City, is different. These players that come up who played on dirt streets with not correct baseball bats, not real baseballs, gloves that they made out of milk cartons, are not used to 20, 30 media guys trying to ask them questions after every game. They're disrespected if they need translators, the Latinos and the Japanese players who need translators, which is obviously no issue. They just want to fit in. But they're forced to anyway. If one man doesn't want to answer to the media, he can be villainized in a New York minute. And you all know what I mean by New York minute. Things happen quickly. It's a 60-second news cycle these days with Twitter and Facebook and all that. It's tough that they're forced into this new culture because Latinos and blacks have grown up in different places, playing in New York, playing in Baltimore, Chicago. These places are different. The media will destroy you. And they're subjected to that. And it's very difficult. And the media still race baits all the time. Going back even a few years, Andy Martino, who's a prevalent sports writer, still race baits. He does it to this day. It's a reputation that holds to him. And you look around and the real issue is, can you kill the idea? Can you put that down? Can you get rid of it? And as a wonderful movie, V for Vendetta, may have taught me, you can't really kill an idea. You can never really kill an idea. And what you'd have to do instead is to replace it with new, more effective ideas, ones that make sense, ones that apply to people that they can connect to these days. Can we do that as a public? I don't know for sure. Because if one man is out there race baiting, then we still have an issue, and a huge one at that.
How's it feel to hang with the big boys? Well said, well spoken, good delivery as well. Please.
I'm going to sit. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I just want to thank Dr. Nampy and Dr. Gregory and Satish and Cecil for being here, and I'm really super honored to be asked to be a part of this panel. I'm going to take a little bit of a different track as one of those athletes who was kind of groomed to play professional sports and chose not to after it was all said and done, but to kind of take you through the course of what it's like to be a sought-after high school athlete and then college athlete, and how your life is not your own. I grew up playing sports as a way to cope with my family breaking down. Siri, tell Siri we're in a panel.
Siri's interested too. She wants to get in on
Siri's
this.
questions are at the end.
As soon as you said that, she was all involved. No, I'm leaving.
Siri does not understand. But while other people use various forms to sort of check out of situations that are really hard and intense to handle, I grew up when divorce wasn't yet all that common for people, and the way I checked out was through sports. I lived sports. I went to the basketball courts every minute that I possibly could when I wasn't doing my homework, because that was mandatory. I was on some kind of field. I played soccer, I played baseball, I played basketball, I ran track. I was on basketball, softball, and basketball, baseball, and soccer. I was the only girl on boys' teams until I moved from where I grew up in Ohio to California. And they wouldn't let me play on the boys' teams, even though I was better than most of the boys that were on the team. So I pretty much started to focus on basketball in high school, and took my high school basketball team to the city finals 3 years in a row, won City Player of the Year, started to build a name for myself, started getting recruited by many schools around the country.
What high school is this?
University High School in West LA, West Los Angeles, California, which was right down the street at the time from UCLA. And I had it, set in my heart that I was going to go play basketball for Billy Moore, who was the white basketball coach of UCLA at the time. And the Bruins had actually just won the national championship right before the Women's League converted from being AIAW to NCAA. And that was it. I didn't even really want to talk to other schools or whatever. I took the recruiting trips because they were free and they were to other parts of the country, and I got out of school, so I didn't have to go to class. So it was kind of like, might as well take them. But I pretty much knew I was going there, and that's when I got my first taste of what it's like to be an athlete that's sought after, is because they recruited me very hard. They came to my games, several of my games. The assistant coach from the second half of the season on to the playoffs was at every single game I played in every part of the city. The high schools I played against at the time, Locke High School, which is where Cynthia Cooper went, LA High, Roz Bolger, who is basically as good as Cynthia, just went to a school that didn't win, so she didn't get the same kind of recognition. She went to Long Beach State. But it was a very competitive league, and I pretty much knew, because UCLA was in the stands every time that I played, that that's where I was going. And during the summers, we all played in this league that was called the Olympic Development League, and that's when all of the rivals and everybody played together, and that's where we played. That's where I first met Cheryl Miller, and I first met the McGee twins, and they would come out and we'd play in these leagues, and then we'd play each other in high school, and then we'd move on to high school, and we'd play in these leagues in summer with and against each other, then we'd play against each other in college. So it was kind of like this family moving up, and we all knew each other from up and down the coast of California, across the country. We all knew each other, and so as I had my heart set on going to UCLA, I found out that they had been recruiting a good friend of mine who lived in Oakland. Her name was Angel Hardy, and we both played point guard, and played with each other on summer league teams, against each other, and had become pretty good buddies. And I was just like, they're recruiting Angel and they're recruiting me. One of us is not going to play very much, right? And so as time went on, and I was waiting for my letter of intent to come from UCLA, it never arrived, because Angel signed first. And the only reason they were recruiting me was in case Angel didn't sign. So even though they courted me, when they got the player that they were really going after, they had no more time for me, none whatsoever. I didn't exist anymore. I mean, there wasn't even we decided to go with another player. They were just gone. They were there every day, and then they were just completely gone. And I had to scramble a little bit, because I had pretty much was telling all these other schools, no. And then I sort of went on a second round of recruiting trips, and that's how I ended up playing basketball for San Diego State, the Aztecs. And in the same conference with all my friends, so it was kind of like, that's fine, that's great. And I went up another level, and when I have to just emphasize to you how much I love the game of basketball. I loved basketball. I breathed basketball. I ate basketball. It was everything. I loved it. And I had so much fun, and I had to promise my mom when I went off to college that if I ever stopped loving the game, that I would stop playing. And I didn't realize how quickly I would stop loving the game of basketball. I stopped loving the game of basketball by the middle of my freshman year. When I was recruited, I was told that academics always came first, that we were students first, and athletics and basketball would never ever interfere with that. So, first road trip of the season, 5-day road trip, Pacific Northwest. I have a midterm in economics on the day that we're supposed to fly. And I go to my coach and I say, I can't make the flight. I have a midterm. The grade in the class was the midterm and the final. So I missed the midterm, I failed the class. It's just like, I can't go. And my coach is like, don't worry about it, you know, we'll take care of it. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. And I also happen to have the professor in the school that hated athletes